Access your free language gifts of the month right now. Here's what you're getting this month. First, the Writing a Journal cheat sheet. With this cheat sheet, you'll be able to keep a diary in your target language and talk about your day. Inside, you'll find phrases for common daily activities, from morning to night. Second, if you love travel, then you'll love our brand new Travel Words and Phrases PDF ebook. Learn all the must-know travel phrases with this ebook. Download it for free right now. Third, must-know words and phrases for your resume. If you want to write your resume in your target language, then this next 1-minute lesson is for you. Fourth, the top 12 April Fool's phrases. Want to prank others and speak more of your target language? Then you'll want this April Fool's phrase list. Fifth, the must-know vocab for doing laundry. If you need language for practical situations like doing laundry, then this 1-minute lesson is for you. You'll learn how to say washing machine, detergent, softener, and much more. Sixth, free audiobooks. Unlock our huge library of language learning audiobooks. Save them to your device and listen and learn. They're yours to keep forever. And finally, the deal of the month. If you want to finally master the language with lessons by real teachers and our complete language learning program, get 31% off Premium or Premium Plus with the You Can Speak sale. So, to get your gifts and language learning resources, click the link in the description below. Download them right now before they expire.
Says, hi Alicia, I've noticed some expressions that use as plus adverb plus as. For example, as soon as. Can you tell me about the adverbs that I can use this with and explain all about it? Sure. Okay, first let's look at a couple of basic ways that you can use this pattern. So we'll talk about as soon as a little bit later because it's a little bit different. But we can use as plus adverb plus as or as plus adjective plus as to show that something is equal to something else. For example, Sarah sings as beautifully as Kim. Jeff is as tall as Dave. So these examples mean that person A and person B are equal in terms of something. In the first example sentence, Sarah and Kim sing equally beautifully. In the second example sentence, Jeff and Dave have equal heights. So as plus adjective or as plus adverb plus as refers to two things that are equal in some way. So that's one way of using this. As soon as, your example, is a bit different from this. We use as soon as to mean that one action will be done or one action will occur immediately after another action. For example, we'll leave as soon as you finish your drink. So that means that one action, leaving, will happen immediately after the other action, finishing a drink. So we'll leave as soon as you finish your drink means we'll leave immediately after or just after you finish your drink. So this is kind of different. We're not using it to make a comparison or to say that something is equal to something else. This is kind of a set expression, which means immediately following something else. Another expression that uses this as plus something plus as pattern is as long as, as long as. So as long as means only if. For example, I can go to the party as long as I finish my homework. So another way to say this is I can go to the party only if I finish my homework, meaning if I do not finish my homework, I cannot go to the party. So as long as is another way to do that. Another pattern is with few and with little, and we use this when we want to emphasize small quantities of things. We use as few as or as little as. For example, as few as 60 people attended the seminar. As few as half of the students passed the class. And as few as 6 students attended the class. So this means that like 6 or 60 or whatever the number is was like a small amount compared to maybe what was expected. So we use as few as or as little as to express that. Keep in mind that this doesn't really matter regarding uncountable or countable nouns. We use this with both. On the other hand, when you want to talk about large amounts of things, you can use as many as to do that. So for example, as many as 1,000 people volunteered for the event, or as many as 60 students entered to win the contest. So that kind of emphasizes that a large amount, or perhaps more of something than expected, happened or occurred. As much as is another expression that follows this as something as pattern, but as much as has some different uses than as many as. We can use as much as to refer to something that is equal, as I talked about at the very beginning to this answer, as in she earns as much as he does, or she drinks as much wine as he does, so that refers to equal amounts of something. We can also use it to talk about like activities we enjoy or activities we feel something for. For example, he likes cooking as much as he likes watching movies, so that expresses equality. There's also one kind of strange use of as much as, which is in examples like, as much as I like the new guy at the office, I don't think he's going to stay at the company long. Or, as much as I want to go to that new restaurant, I don't have a budget for it this week. So this use of as much as means like despite or even though. So like despite how much I like that new guy, or even though I really like that new guy, I can't see him at the company for very long, or something like that. So we use as much as usually at the beginning of a clause to mean despite or even though. So this is a quick introduction to some very common as something as patterns, some of which use adverbs. But I hope that this helps answer your question. Thanks very much. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Amar. Hi, Amar. Amar says, hi, Alicia. Is there any difference between these, day by day and by the day, minute by minute and by the minute, hour by hour and by the hour? Yes, there are some differences. First, let's look at one group of these. Let's look at day by day, hour by hour, and minute by minute. We use these expressions to mean that something happens gradually, something maybe changes gradually, a condition or a state changes gradually over a period of time. So for example, day by day, she worked on her project until it was finished. Or minute by minute, she grew hungrier and hungrier. Hour by hour, he got more and more worried. So each of these expressions shows how much time passed, like what was the length of time of that activity. In the first example sentence, day by day, it means that she worked on her project over a period of days. In the second example sentence, over several minutes, she grew hungrier and hungrier. In the third example sentence, over a period of hours, he got more and more worried. So we use this pattern to show like the gradual progression of something or gradual change in something. We can use the second pattern you introduced, this by the day or by the hour or by the minute to do it, but we need to change the sentences slightly. For example, her project progressed by the day. She grew hungrier by the minute. He became more and more worried by the hour. So when you're using this by the day or by the minute or by the hour pattern, you need to make sure that the subject of your sentence is the thing that is changing. So in some cases, the thing that is changing might be separate from like the person who is doing the activity. This is especially the case for the first example sentence. When using that day by day pattern, I said day by day, she worked on her project until it was finished. That's fine. But when I'm using this by the day pattern, I need to make the thing that is changing the subject of my sentence. So in this case, her project progressed by the day. So that means her project, the thing that is changing, progressed. So that means it moved forward by the day. So this pattern, personally, I don't use this one so much. I think I might use the first style a little bit more commonly. The final point for my answer to this question is about the second group of expressions. We can use these when we're talking about prices for goods or for services. So let's imagine that we are renting an office space. To rent the office space by the day, it's $70. to rent the office space by the minute, it's 20 cents. And to rent the office space by the hour, it's $10. So we use by the minute, or by the hour, or by the day, or maybe by the week, perhaps, in some cases, to talk about prices for time periods of things. So you may see this if, again, you're like renting a space, or you need to buy some goods or a service or something, and the available prices are in units of time. So this is another case where you might see this. So I hope that this answer helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Van An. Hi, Van An. Van An says, I'm very confused about the conversion of adverbs of time in reported speech. For example, the rules say today needs to be turned into that day, tomorrow becomes the next day, and yesterday becomes the day before. Why is that? Also, why do people who are learning English as a second language need to learn about reported speech and direct and indirect speech, but native speakers don't? First question, I wouldn't say that these are rules. There's not a rule about using tomorrow or yesterday or the next day or whatever. What's important when you're reporting speech is to consider the relationship between your conversation to the present point in time. So, for example, if you and I had a conversation before I started recording this video about like some plan we have for 2 days in the future, and then I want to report that to our mutual friend the next day, so tomorrow, now, I would say, hey, I talked to Van yesterday, or Van told me about this yesterday, or I want to talk to you about tomorrow's plan. I talked to Van about it yesterday. So what's important is the relationship between that conversation, the conversation where you're reporting something, and the actual conversation that you're referring to. So that relationship is what's important. So I wouldn't say like the next day. I would say tomorrow, because it's quite natural. It is natural to use the next day if it's like something that was in the past, or it's not easy to use tomorrow or yesterday. So if we think about a different example, like if I want to talk about a meeting that happened 2 weeks ago, then I would probably use that day or the next day. So for example, I could say, on that day, my manager said my project was a great success. The next day, I received a promotion. So in that case, on that day refers to the day of the meeting. So maybe I don't need to be specific. Then the next day refers to the day following the meeting. I cannot use tomorrow in that case because tomorrow is referencing only the day after the present. So tomorrow has a very specific use. The next day refers to the next day in the story. So we can't use tomorrow or yesterday loosely. We can use the next day or the day before or the day prior to talk about like past events or even future events as well too. But tomorrow, today, and yesterday are very like constrained, so it's kind of strict, our use of those. We need to use those when referring to the present point in time. So please keep this in mind, so don't worry about like following a specific rule for reporting speech in this way. Think about your relationship to the conversation you're having now and the conversation about which you are reporting. That's what's important here. So this will get easier with time and with practice. And if it's helpful, you might take a look at a calendar while you try to think about how to report speech, and it might kind of help you visualize how to explain things in the best way. Regarding your second question, native speakers do learn about reporting speech and reporting like indirect and direct speech. We just learn it naturally, as speakers of any language do. So this is something for everybody to learn and that everybody uses. I hope that this helps you. Thanks for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Khalil. Hi, Khalil. Khalil says, hi, Alicia. How do I get better at pronouncing P and B in words like probably, responsible, purple, back, pack, bath, path, and so on? Well, you already know that these letters or these sounds are challenging for you, so the next step really is to practice. I would say when you practice pronunciation too, if it's something that you can't quite get the hang of, like you feel like you're trying really hard but you can't quite make the sound, try practicing a bit in front of a mirror and look at the way a native speaker says those sounds. So Google or find on YouTube a video of someone saying these sounds. So it's not just listening, but you want to actually see someone making these sounds and try to make your mouth make the same motions as the native speaker. So this might feel a little bit uncomfortable at first. Like when I teach pronunciation lessons with my students, they feel like a little uncomfortable or they laugh because we have to use like sounds in English that they don't use in their native language, and it feels strange to them. So if it feels strange, that's okay. Like try to push yourself to make a new sound. So for example, when you're making a P sound, P, you need to really like pull your lips in to make that P sound. So you can't make a P sound with a B sound mouth position. So it's going to sound like B. You need to make a P gesture sort of, or a P motion with your mouth. So try practicing in front of a mirror and see if you can make your mouth motions match the motions of a native speaker. And if you have trouble pronouncing the whole word, like probably in one go, try breaking it down into syllables. So prob, ly, and then try to connect the syllables together. So ubly or probab, something like that. So break the words down until you feel comfortable that you're pronouncing them correctly. So I hope that this helps, and good luck with your pronunciation studies. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Phoenix. Hi, Phoenix. Phoenix says, hi, Alicia. I am Phoenix from Vietnam. Could you explain the difference between bar, pub, beer club, and beer garden? Thanks a million. Okay, sure. A bar is a place where alcoholic drinks are served. Bars can be casual, they can be very luxurious. Perhaps they have a few snacks, but usually snacks are like maybe nuts or maybe like dried fruit or something like that. So a bar is a place primarily, usually for alcoholic drinks. A pub is a bit more of a casual place. A pub has kind of a neighborhood feel. It's usually not like a luxurious place. The probably most popular drink at a pub is beer. And you can get food at a pub. It's usually not super healthy. It's usually like fried foods or like meat or maybe stews, that kind of thing. So it's often this very like hearty kind of home-style cooking at pubs. A beer club is not something that we have, at least in the US. That's not a word that we really use in English. That's not a word we use in English at all together. A beer club, separately, that could refer to a group of people that gets together to drink beer, or maybe they have some kind of membership system where they exchange beer, I don't know. So it could be a beer club, people who enjoy beer together. We do have the word beer bar, which refers to a certain type of bar that serves just specialty beer. So that is a word, a beer bar. You might also hear the word beer pub, which is like a more casual beer bar. Finally, a beer garden is a place outside, usually at like a festival or some other kind of event, where people can drink beer outside. So it's just like, kind of like what it sounds. You can usually drink beer in like a grassy area outside. So that's called a beer garden. I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Electra from Greece. Could you please explain gerunds to us? Sure. A gerund is a verb in the ing form. So using it in this way makes it a noun. We can use it as a noun in a sentence. For example, she likes cooking, or he hates hiking. So in these sentences, the words that end in ing are gerunds. In the first sentence, cooking. In the second sentence, hiking. We can use gerunds and the infinitive forms of verbs sometimes interchangeably. So the infinitive form of a verb is to plus the base form of the verb. For example, she likes to cook, or he likes to hike. A very common question is, when do I use a gerund? When do I use an infinitive? And the question is quite big. It's way too big to answer in this series. The reason is that there are many different groups of verbs that tend to take gerunds or that tend to take infinitives, but there are exceptions all over the place. So it's quite challenging to make a rule or a guide specifically for gerunds or specifically for infinitives. So this is a quick introduction to what a gerund is. It's a verb that takes an ing ending and is used as a noun in a sentence. I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from El Hassan Ahmed. Hello, El Hassan. El Hassan says, I sometimes hear people say better instead of improve, as if it is a verb. Is that formal? For example, think about how to better yourself. Also, I heard someone say more better, and it sounded strange to me. I mean, can I say he is more taller than me? I don't think I can. Thanks a lot. Okay, yes, exactly. To better means to improve. And yes, it does sound a little bit more polite, a little bit more formal. Like, you should better yourself, you should improve yourself. Or she aims to better her students, meaning she aims to improve her students. So yes, you can use better to mean improve in this way. Just make sure you use it as a verb. To answer your second question though, more better, as you've said, yes, is grammatically incorrect. And you're also correct, you cannot say he is more taller than me. That's also incorrect. So the reason that you might hear something like this is because native speakers often like to make grammatical mistakes on purpose to sound funny, like to sound childish or like to make a joke. So a very popular one is to use the expression more better. Like, that's more better. It sounds kind of cute, like a child who hasn't learned all of the grammar rules of English yet. They might say more better instead of just better. So this is maybe like a way that someone could joke around or just try to sound more friendly or kind of cute in their speaking. Thanks very much for the question. I hope that this helps you. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Tatsu. Hi, Tatsu. Tatsu says, could you tell me the difference between correct and right? Sure. If you're talking about the opposite of wrong, as in like the answers on a test, then correct and right are both fine to use. You can use either of them. If you're talking about the opposite of left, then you have to use right. You cannot use correct for that. We also talk about things that are societally proper, that are societally good with the word right. We do not use correct. So for example, if you say like, oh my gosh, my medical fees from my hospital stay were so high, that's not right. So we use right to mean like that's not good or that's not fair, that's not like a good thing in our society. We also use the word right to mean like basic human rules in a society again too. So for example, in the USA, people have the right to silence. So that means a basic rule that people have in the US is the ability to keep their silence about something. So we cannot use correct in that case. So these are the various uses of correct and right. I hope that this helps you. Thanks for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Mit. Hi, Mit says, hi, Alicia. Why don't native speakers use specific times in present perfect, but they do use specific times in simple past tense? Because when we're using the basic form of present perfect, we're not focusing on when in the past a specific action occurred. We just want to talk about that life experience. So the time, the point in time at which it happened is not important, or we don't know, or we don't want to focus on that. For example, I have been to France, or he has eaten sushi. In these situations, for whatever reason, when that happened is not important. We just want to express our life experience. So we do not use a specific point in time, and it sounds very unnatural to use a specific point in time with that like present perfect tense. If, however, you want to use present perfect continuous to talk about a point at which something started and then has continued until the present time, you can and you should use a for or since ending to it. For example, I have been living in France since 2013, or he has been studying English for 3 years. In those cases, we need to mark the starting point of that action or condition, so we do use a specific point in time. Let's compare this then to using simple past tense. When we use simple past tense, we want to express an action that started and that finished in the past, and so we do use a specific point in time. For example, I went to France last summer. or he ate sushi last week. So, in sum, if you want to just share a general life experience, use the regular present perfect tense. If you want to talk about something that started in the past and continues to the present, use present perfect continuous and include a specific point in time at which your action started or began, or like when your condition started. If you want to talk about something that's done, that's over, and you want to talk about the specific point at which that thing happened, use simple past tense. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Late Jerry. Hi, Late Jerry. Late Jerry says, hi, Alicia. A lot of people use double negation lately. Is this a kind of innovation? Can we use it? Is it grammatically correct? For example, can't nobody tell me nothing? Nice question. Yeah, some people who are very strict about grammar, like now and historically, consider double negation to be like incorrect, or they think that it's a sign of poor education or something like that. But that's not the case. Double negation has existed in English for a long time, and it exists now. So in some dialects in English, double negation or multiple negation is used more commonly than in other dialects. So for example, I don't really use double negation in my speech, but in certain parts of the US or in certain parts of England, people may use that kind of speech. So I would suggest that if it's not natural for you, if you didn't grow up with it, if it's not something that you or the people around you regularly use, it's probably going to sound very unnatural for you to use that. So your example sentence was, can't nobody tell me nothing? That is not a sentence I personally would use, but someone who speaks a different dialect of English that uses this kind of negation might. If I wanted to say that sentence, I would say something like, nobody can tell me anything. That's how I would say it. So using the other sentence would sound very unnatural for me. That kind of speech is not natural for me, so it sounds perhaps rude maybe or offensive for me to use that. I would say just try to be aware of the people who are around you. If you are learning English in a place where double negation is common, then perhaps it's natural for you to use a bit of it as well. If you're just kind of trying to mimic something that maybe you heard on TV or in music or in media or something like that, it's probably going to sound very unnatural. So yes, it is used. Yes, it is featured actually in some dialects of English. That doesn't mean that it's natural for everyone to use. If this kind of speech is hard for you to understand, don't worry. This is just another part of language learning, and this is a specific way that some people speak in English. So while yes, it does go against like traditional grammar rules, I suppose, that doesn't mean that the communication is any less valid. So try to keep that in mind. And again, if it's difficult for you to understand people who speak this way, that's okay. Just with time and practice, you will gradually come to know what that sentence means or what that speaker is actually saying. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for an interesting question. Takumi says, hi Alicia, I'm a university student in Japan. I teach English to elderly students as a part-time job. One of them asked me what fire with fire means. I guess the man heard the phrase in a movie. Could you tell me the meaning? Yeah, this is part of an idiom. The expression is usually to fight fire with fire. That's the full phrase typically. You might also hear to match fire with fire or to meet fire with fire, but in most cases it's to fight fire with fire. This phrase means to fight an opponent with the same weapon or the same method that your opponent uses. So sometimes this literally means fighting someone with the same kind of weapon, but in most cases it's talking about like a specific kind of competition and using the same method as your opponent to participate in that competition. For example, if someone starts shouting at you, you can fight fire with fire by shouting back at them. So in that case, there's no fire involved, but shouting is your opponent's weapon or method of attacking. So if you want to fight that, you use the same method and shout back. So that could be considered fighting fire with fire. You might also hear this used in like business situations when you're talking about like competition between businesses or between companies or industries. For example, Company A is spending a lot of money on advertising this year. We have to fight fire with fire and increase our own advertising budget. So this just means to compete or like to attack or oppose someone with the same method or the same weapon that they use against you. So again, this is usually to fight fire with fire. I hope that that helps you. Thanks for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from El Hassan Ahmed. Hello again, El Hassan. El Hassan says, what is the difference between I don't know what is that and I don't know what that is? For example, I don't know what the difference between them is, and I don't know what is the difference between them. Okay, the difference is that the second example is correct. The first example is incorrect. These are examples of what are called embedded questions. So it's when we have a question inside a statement, or we have a question inside another question. These are called embedded questions, And when we use the verb to be in embedded questions, it takes a slightly different word order. So when we use the verb to be to ask a direct question, we would say something like, where is the restroom? Or where are my coworkers? That's a direct question. But when we use an indirect question or we use an embedded question, we have to change the word order a little bit. So instead of where is the restroom, we have to say something like, I don't know where the restroom is. And instead of where are my coworkers, we might say, do you know where my coworkers are? So in each of these examples, the to be verb actually moves to the end of the sentence or to the end of the question. This is kind of special for these embedded question style responses. So keep this in mind when you're making an embedded question. Is does not follow your question word. Is goes at the end of the sentence. The same is true for are and of course was and were if you're making past tense statements or past tense questions. But again, this is just for the verb to be. If you're using any other verb, you don't need to worry about this change. So if it's like talk or walk or drink or whatever, you don't need to worry about that. If you're using the verb to be, however, you do need to switch your word order in the sentence. So again, your second example sentence is correct. So I don't know what that is the correct sentence. I don't know what is that is incorrect. Of course, if you're ever not sure what to do and you're faced with a situation where you should choose, it's not impolite, it's not incorrect to use a direct question like, where is the restroom? But it does sound a bit more polite to phrase it indirectly or to use an embedded question, like, do you know where the restroom is? It sounds a bit more polite. So again, if you're ever unsure, you can use a direct question, no problem, but do make sure to practice these embedded questions and the special pattern that we use with the verb to be. So I hope that that helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from An. Hi, An. An says, can you give an explanation about the word roughly? Thanks so much. Okay, sure, roughly means about. It means approximately or around. For example, roughly half of the students in the class passed the test. Sales decreased by roughly 30% last month. So in these cases, roughly means about or around. We tend to use roughly more in polite situations like at work, in meetings. We don't use it so much in everyday conversation. In everyday conversation, we use about or around. There's another use of roughly, however, which you can kind of think of as meaning aggressive or like a little bit aggressive or not refined. So for example, my neighbor speaks roughly, but he's actually a nice guy. Or this woman on the train pushed me really roughly. It hurt. So in those cases, roughly means in kind of an aggressive manner, a slightly aggressive manner, or a not refined manner. So when we use roughly as an adverb in this way, it means like not refined. It's kind of aggressive. When you're using it to talk about amounts or data, it means about. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Patricia. Hi, Patricia. Patricia says, hi, Alicia. I enjoy your videos. Thank you. My question is about when I visit restaurants and I don't want ice in my drink, for example. How do I say that? No ice or without ice? Thank you. Yeah, we would say no ice, no ice. So if you said without ice, it's probably not a communication issue, but more naturally we would say no ice, please. You can use this for pretty much anything, any kind of special order, like no tomato, no onion, no pickles, and so on. So if you don't want something, use no before the name of that thing that you don't want. We have another expression that we use at restaurants, which is on the side, on the side. So for example, if you order a salad and you say, I'd like the dressing on the side, please, it means your salad and the dressing, or the topping for the salad, will come separately. So if you don't say on the side, the restaurant staff will probably put the dressing on top of your salad and serve it to you. If you request the dressing on the side, however, you can choose how much to put on top of your salad. So some people like to, in this case with salads, request that things be served separately. To do that, you say on the side. You'll usually get a separate dish or a separate cup or bowl or something for your dressing or whatever it is you've chosen to order. So on the side is another thing you can use in restaurants. Finally, for the opposite of this situation, for the opposite of no, if you want more of something, you use extra, extra, like extra cheese, please, or extra bacon, please, or extra avocado. Keep in mind, though, that when you say extra, you're probably going to have to pay more. So if you have like a cheeseburger, for example, and you say, I'd like extra avocado. So that means there's already avocado on the cheeseburger. You want more avocado on it. You're probably going to have to pay more for that avocado. If, however, you order something without an ingredient, like no tomato on this cheeseburger, there's no discount. So please don't expect a discount if you ask for less of something. If you ask for more of something, however, it's probably going to cost you a little more money. So also keep in mind that we use extra when something already exists inside the dish. So in my example, it's like an avocado burger. There's avocado on the burger. I want more. I say extra. If there's no avocado on the burger, I say like something like, can I have avocado as a topping, please? Or can I add avocado as a topping, please? We might use one of those expressions. So can I have something as a topping, or can I add something? We might use one of those two patterns. So those are a few restaurant-related expressions that I hope are helpful for you. Thanks for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Wilgens de Sames. Hello, Wilgens. Wilgens says, hi, Alicia. Is there a difference between to lend and to borrow? Yes, the difference is in the point of view. For example, I lent my friend a pen, and my friend borrowed a pen from me. So when the person that is giving the object is the subject of the sentence, we use lend. When the person who is receiving the object is the subject of the sentence, we use borrow. So let's swap the people in my example sentences. So my friend lent me a pen, and I borrowed a pen from my friend. So again, in those cases, the person giving the object is the subject of the sentence when I use lend, and the person receiving the object is the subject of the verb borrow when I use borrow. So please keep this in mind, this relationship. So am I giving or am I receiving? That's what's important to keep in mind. I know it's a little confusing at first, but with practice, you will get the hang of it. You'll get used to it. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about phrasal verbs with back. Let's get started. Okay, first I want to introduce a group of 4 verbs that shares one common point. That is this. These 4 verbs all have the meaning of moving with the rear part of something forward. So if you imagine a car, the front and the back of a car, like the front side and the back side of a person. If you imagine, all of these verbs share the meaning of making a motion in some direction, of moving in some direction. However, the rear part is the part that is like the forward moving part. So we usually walk with this part of our body moving forward, but when we move with the rear part forward. It means this direction. So we're moving back in a backwards motion. So these 4 verbs all include that meaning. I want to mention that first. These that we'll talk about later don't include that meaning. So these 4 include that meaning plus some preposition that tells us the direction of that movement and the relationship of that movement as well to something else. So with that in mind, let's take a look at these 4 phrasal verbs. The first phrasal verb here is back into, back into. So back into means moving with the rear part forward, yes, so this kind of motion, plus moving into a space. So to back into something, you're backing into an enclosed space. So imagine with a car, a lot of these will be very, very useful for using with a car. So an example of this would be this one. He backed into the parking space. He backed into the parking space. So you imagine with a car, backing in, the rear part of the car moves in to the parking space. That means the rear part of the car enters the parking space first. So we use the phrasal verb to back into. You'll notice here too, this is the past tense form, backed. He backed in. Backed is the past form of back. So he backed into the parking space. It tells us that he moved with the rear part of the car forward into the parking space. Okay, so now let's look at the opposite of this, to back out of something. So since we have out here, we had in before, this shows us this is the opposite direction then. However, we don't use back out to, we use back out of. Please be careful here, back out of. So this means to move out of a space, to move out of a space. So an example sentence might be, a question in this case, can you back out of the garage? Can you back out of the garage? So again, this means the rear part of the car is moving forward. However, instead of going into a space, the motion is coming from a space. So we're backing out of a space. That means from a position inside a room, in this case a garage, the back of the car moves first out of the garage. So backing out of something, to back out of a garage or to back out of a parking space as well. Okay, now let's move along to the next phrasal verb, back onto, back onto. This is quite different from back in or back out. To back onto means to move backwards on top of something. So again, when you're driving a car, for example, you might use the expression, he backed onto the sidewalk. So this means the rear part of the car moved first, and as it moved on top of something else. So there's movement and movement onto another thing. He backed onto the sidewalk, or he backed onto maybe a bicycle, for example. So movement backwards and on top of something else. So this might happen to you when you're using a car or another vehicle. So let's move on to the next phrasal verb, which is back away from. Back away from is a phrasal verb you might use more to talk about your body, the motion of your body, than you would a car. So this means to move backwards in a direction opposite to something else. So by this I mean there's maybe another person or there's something that you want to move away from, and again, the rear part of your body moves first. So if you imagine it that there's something like in front of you here, in front of the front part of your body, and you want to move away from it, but you maintain this direction with your body, we use the phrasal verb to back away from to talk about doing that. So an example sentence, they backed away from the fire. So you imagine there's a fire, like you're camping, for example, and you move in this way. You can say you backed away from the fire. So to back away from might be something you use to talk about your body, more so than to talk about a car, perhaps. But this means moving in an opposite direction from something else. Okay, so let's move along then to the next 3, which do not belong to this group relating to that kind of rear-facing motion. These are very different, actually. Let's first begin with this expression, to back off, to back off. So to back off means to remove oneself from a situation, that's one, or to move away in fear. So this first one, to remove yourself from a situation, this is often said in response to a person who's getting involved in a situation. You want that person to go away from the situation. So it's commonly used as a command, like back off. It means go away, or stop bothering me. Maybe you're working on a project, for example, and someone tries to come share opinions or criticize your work or something. You're not ready. You can say, back off, I'm still working on this, for example. So it's used often to give a command to someone, actually. We also use this to express fear, like if someone threatens us or we're afraid of something and we want to kind of move away from the situation, we can use back off as well. Let's look at an example. Here, back off and let us deal with the problem. So this is related to criticism, like we don't need you to be involved, so let us handle it. That's kind of the feeling of back off, like we don't need you, please go away. So to back off in this way refers to leaving a situation. Okay, let's move along to the next one, which is back down. To back down from something means to admit a mistake. To admit a mistake, or it can mean like to stop supporting something. These are actually kind of connected. To stop supporting something is like to stop supporting an opinion, kind of. So when you admit a mistake, you stop supporting that mistake, is kind of the idea here. So an example of this could be, my neighbor won't back down. He accuses me of being noisy. So the neighbor, in other words, is wrongly accusing the speaker of being noisy, but the neighbor won't back down. That means the neighbor refuses to admit a mistake. He or she refuses to admit that there's something wrong, refuses to stop supporting the opinion. So my neighbor won't back down. He won't stop, in other words. He continues to accuse me. So to back down is like, yeah, kind of removing your support for something you said or like some behavior you had in the past. Okay, let's move along then to the last phrasal verb for this lesson, which is to back up, to back up. This is used in terms of to back up someone, to back up another person. This means to support someone verbally. So verbally means with your words. To support someone verbally is to back someone up. So you can split this, to back someone up. So an example of this could be, my colleagues backed me up when I made a complaint. So my colleagues supported me when I made a complaint. I made the complaint and my colleagues verbally, or they shared some words to support what I was saying, in other words. So to back someone up means to support them. Keep in mind this is very different from to be a backup. To be a backup means to be a substitute for something. It has a very different meaning here. So to be a backup, that's something very different from to back someone up. So keep that in mind and try to pay attention to the situations where those two words are used. All right, so those are hopefully a few new ways that you can use the verb back. Of course, if you have any questions or comments or want to try to make a sentence, or maybe you know a different way of using the verb back, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about some phrasal verbs that use the word push. So these are expressions that feature the verb push, but have a slightly different meaning from the basic meaning of push. Let's take a look. Okay, let's begin with the first expression, which is push off. To push off means to begin moving. Usually we use this with a boat. When we say push off, it's like we're pushing away from some kind of like safety or some kind of support. We typically use this for boats to mean moving away from like a dock, moving away from land, moving away from the part of the boat that's connected to some safety on land. So we use this like to refer to moving away from a safe place, but it tends to be used a lot in boats. An example of this, we pushed off at 8 a.m. So here it's the past tense, we pushed off, and the time. We pushed off at 8 a.m. means probably the boat left the safe place at the dock at 8 a.m. So to push off means to begin moving away from something, some kind of support. Okay, let's move along to the next expression. The next expression is to push by. To push by something or to push by someone means to use a pushing motion to move past someone or something. We use this a lot with people. In a crowded situation where you're near someone else, but you would like to move past that person, you can use a slight pushing motion, a gentle pushing motion to move past that person. So you don't want to maybe push them a lot, but you can alert the other person. You can tell the other person you're going to pass them with this expression. For example, I'm gonna push by you. I'm gonna push by you shows I'm going to push myself, or I'm maybe going to push something close to you, or I might push you a little bit. It refers to making a pushing motion to move somewhere. So to push by someone, in this case, to push by you. In other words, I'm going to make a pushing motion and move past you. It's usually a small pushing motion, not a big one. So this is just a quick kind of alert phrase you can tell someone as you move by them. Okay, let's move along to the next expression, which is to push someone around. To push someone around means to bully someone, to bully someone. So you can imagine this is in a situation where there's someone maybe higher level and someone lower level. This could be at school, it could be at work, it could be in groups of friends. When you push someone around, you are unkind to them. You make unkind comments to them. You ask them to do lots of things for you for kind of no reason, just to use your power over that person. We use the expression to push someone around to talk about bullying someone like this. An example, don't let your boss push you around. So in other words, don't let your boss bully you. Don't let your boss make you do so many things, or don't let your boss be rude to you. So to push someone around is like you're using them or you're not treating them with respect. It's not a good thing. It's a negative expression. Okay, let's move on to the next phrasal verb. The next phrasal verb is to push limits. To push limits. You'll hear this a lot in technology, news, business perhaps as well. This expression means to work at the extremes. So you can imagine that there's some kind of boundary, some kind of limit in your field, at your job, in your life. So to push those limits means to work there and try to expand those boundaries. You're working at like the extreme part of your job or the extreme part of your industry, your knowledge, or whatever it is in your case. And you're trying to make that like bigger. You're trying to expand that. So we use the expression push limits to refer to that kind of thing. A very common example is we're pushing the limits of technology. So here it's the progressive tense. We're pushing the limits of technology. In other words, we're trying to make the limits of technology a little bit bigger, or we're trying to go to the next step, kind of. So we're pushing the limits. This is an expression we use to talk about like next generation things, or kind of evolution of some kind. Another way to think of pushing limits is like doing the impossible or working to do the impossible. So something that's not possible now may become possible through your efforts. So it's like you're trying to do something that's not possible in the present, but you want it to become possible in the future. You're pushing the limits of what's available to you now. Okay, let's move along to the next phrasal verb then. The next phrasal verb is to push ahead. I want to group this with the next one in the list as well. To push ahead and to push along. These have quite similar meanings. Push ahead feels a little more like to make efforts to create forward progress, to push ahead like to the next step with something, to push ahead in a project, to push ahead in your business idea. To push along is kind of like to cause someone else to make that forward progress. So you can use it for a project as well, like to try to push along a project. But when we use push along, it's like you're trying to kind of help something or help someone else make forward progress. So they tend to be used in very similar ways, but perhaps there are some slight differences in nuance. We might use push along more with people than push ahead. So as I said, push ahead kind of feels like making efforts to make forward progress, to move to the next step with something. And then we can think of push along as like moving something forward or causing another person to move forward as well. So let's take a look at some example sentences. First, let's push ahead to the next step. So let's make efforts to move to the next step in the thing we are doing. In the second example sentence with push along, I've used a person here. Can you try to push him along? So can you try to motivate him, to encourage him? Try to push him along, meaning get him, motivate him to do his tasks or to do the things he needs to do so we can go to the next step. So you're trying to get someone moving here. So quite similar ideas, but maybe slight differences in how they are used. Okay, let's move along to the next expression, which is push back. To push back means to resist something or to oppose something. So this is used a lot in politics and in business, in any kind of like discussion where there's a lot of disagreement. To push back against something usually. You're opposing an idea, opposing a person, opposing a policy. So to push back is to resist that or to oppose that. An example. Management pushed back against our proposal. So we made a proposal for something in the office and management opposed that. They did not want to do that thing. They resisted, so they pushed back. You might also hear this used as a noun, push back. Pushback. So not to push back, but there was pushback against our proposal. So you can hear this used as a phrasal verb or as a noun, but they both refer to resisting or opposing something. Okay, one more then for this lesson. It is to push for something. To push for something means to try to persuade someone of something. So if you really, really want to get something, you're trying to convince someone something is a good idea, or you're trying to convince someone to give you something, we can use the expression push for that thing to describe that. So in this example sentence, it feels kind of like you're persuading yourself a little bit, like you're trying to motivate yourself, making efforts for yourself for your future. You could also use this in talking to other people, in trying to convince other people, like trying to push your boss for a raise, for example. So it means you're trying to convince your boss or persuade your boss to give you a raise. A raise is increased salary, increased money at your job. So pushing for something is like you're trying to make efforts in order to achieve something or to get something or to convince someone of something. So to push for a thing. Okay, so those are a few examples of some phrasal verbs that use the word push. I hope that you found something new here. So keep an eye out for these the next time you see them in writing. Of course, if you have any questions or comments or want to practice using one of these phrasal verbs, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. 10 countable nouns with irregular plural forms. Let's go. Mouse, mice. The first noun is mouse. In the singular, it's mouse. In the plural, it's mice. Mice. One mouse, two mice. Not mouses, not meese, not anything like that. Not mouse or mouses, but mice, mice. One mouse, two mice, three mice, four mice. In a sentence, I hope you don't have mice in your house. Goose, geese. So the next word is goose. Goose. A goose is a kind of big, noisy bird, really. But a goose
in the plural form, a goose becomes geese. So one goose, two geese. The collective noun as well. So the noun we use to talk about a group of geese is a flock of geese, a flock of geese. We use flock for birds, actually, for collective nouns, except for like crows. For some reason, we use a murder of crows. Isn't that weird? I'm not sure about the history of that word, but we say like a flock of birds, or like a flock of seagulls, or like a flock of geese. But we use a murder of crows. That's such a weird collective noun when you think about it. I gotta research the history on that one. Anyway, in a sentence, geese migrate south in the winter. Tooth, teeth. The next noun is tooth, tooth. So the singular form is tooth. The plural form is teeth, teeth. One tooth, three teeth. So please be careful. Not tooths, but teeth, teeth. Tooth is an irregular noun. Tooth, teeth. In a sentence, the tooth fairy is a mystical creature that brings children money for teeth they've lost. Foot, feet. The next noun is foot, foot. So one foot, 2 feet. So we can use this both for the part of the body and for the system of measurement that we use in the US and I think in one other country. We measure things using feet. So like 1 foot is, 12 inches, I think? And then 2 feet. We can also use this kind of for the system of measurement. 1 foot, 2 feet. So please be careful of that. Not foots, but feet, feet in the plural form. In a sentence, keep your feet on the ground. Child, children. Okay, the next one is child, child. Please be careful. Child is the singular form. Children is the plural form. Children. 1 child, 2 children. Many children, lots of children. So, but be careful. Not childs, not childs. Children is the plural form here. Please be careful. In a sentence, some people want to have lots of children. Person, people. The next word is person, person. In the singular form, 1 person. In the plural form, people, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, many people, lots of people, tons of people, a bunch of people. People is the plural form there. So please use people when you want to use the plural form of person. 1 person, 2 people. In a sentence, the world is full of different people. Man, men. The next noun is man, man. In the singular form, man. In the plural form, men. Please be careful. The pronunciation, the vowel sound pronunciation changes significantly. Not mans, but men, men. 1 man, 2 men, 3 men, 4 men. 1 man, 2 men. So listen for that E sound or the A sound there. This can be a really key listening point as well. In a sentence, more and more men are taking paternity leave these days. Woman, women. The next noun is woman, woman. The singular form is woman. The plural form is women. So please be careful here. Although the spellings of these 2 words are roughly the same and only the vowel sound at the end appears to change, actually the O sound at the beginning of the word also changes. In the singular form, woman, so we have this sort of sound with the O at the beginning of the word, woman in singular. In the plural form, however, we have women. It's an I sound. So in spelling, the O does not change. But in speaking, the sound does change. Woman, women. So please be cautious of this, both when you're speaking and when you're listening. Woman, 2 women. 1 woman, 2 women. In a sentence, look, those women are all wearing the same hat. Sheep, sheep. The next noun is sheep, sheep. Sheep is the next noun. The plural form is actually just sheep. We cannot add an S to this. We don't say sheeps. We say sheep for the singular and sheep for the plural. Weird, right? So 1 sheep, 2 sheep, 3 sheep, 4 sheep. It's no change. This word does not change at all. So how do we know? We just look at the word that comes before sheep. So if we say 2 sheep or lots of sheep or a herd of sheep, herd is the collective noun for sheep or for like cattle and farm animals, big ones anyway. So sheep does not change actually. It's an irregular one. The same rule applies to fish actually. Fish in the singular, fish in the plural. Anyway, sheep in a sentence. Visit a farm if you want to see lots of sheep. Knife, knives. The next noun is knife, knife. So one knife in the singular form. In the plural form, it is knives, knives. So there's a V sound that comes into this word. Knife, that F sound, knife, becomes a V sound in the plural. Knives, one knife, two knives. We also see this with the word scarf, actually. One scarf, two scarves, for example. So please be careful of this. So the spelling does change significantly as well, too. In a sentence, then, I hear you only really need 3 knives in your kitchen. The first expression is, I'd like to go to blah, blah, blah. I'd like to go to your hotel name. I'd like to go to attraction name. I'd like to go to the nearest station, please. This is an expression you can use with perhaps a taxi driver or maybe like a shuttle bus driver from your hotel. I don't know. So if you want to explain where you're trying to go, you can use this expression. I'd like to go to blah, blah, blah. I'd like to go to blah, blah, blah. In a sentence, I'd like to go to the Empire State Building. Number of people, please. The next expression is number of people, please. Number of people, please. By this, I mean like the number of people in your group. This is an expression you can use when you go to a restaurant. So if you're traveling with your family, for example, you could say 4, please, when you enter a restaurant. Or if you're traveling with one other person, you could say 2, please. So just the number of people in your group when you go to a restaurant. This can be just a small thing that you learn how to say so that you can quickly communicate with restaurant staff. So, in a sentence, 2 people, please. Numbers. Okay, next is just numbers. Numbers are very useful when you travel, especially if you're traveling to a place where the price tags for items might not be clearly displayed. So if you're going to maybe like a flea market, or if you're going to like a yard sale or something where the prices are not clearly marked, you can use your knowledge of numbers to ask about and to listen for prices of things. So if you know your numbers, this can be very helpful for you. And maybe you can also like protect yourself from getting charged too much money for something. In a sentence, wow, $50 for this sandwich? Thank you. The next expression is thank you, thank you. So before you travel, make sure to study how to say thank you and maybe a few different ways that you can say thank you to people. Of course, the most basic form in English is thank you, but maybe consider thanks or I appreciate it or thanks a lot. So make sure to know how to say thank you before you travel. In a sentence, thank you for your help. Can you tell me where is? The next expression is, can you tell me where something is? So if you need to ask for directions, you can use this pattern. Can you tell me where the bathroom is, for example? Or can you tell me where this restaurant is? Or can you tell me where this sightseeing spot is? So you can use this when you need to ask directions or when you're like in a department store or a shopping situation and you need help finding something. Can you tell me where something is? In a sentence. Can you tell me where the station is? Excuse me. The next expression is excuse me, excuse me. So this is useful for if you bump into someone on the street or if you need to interrupt someone, like you need to approach someone with a question. You can sort of begin the conversation with excuse me and then maybe could you tell me where the station is? Or excuse me, I'd like to go to blah, blah, blah. So using excuse me can be a polite way to initiate, to begin a conversation with someone. Excuse me. So in English we have excuse me, or we have sorry as well, but sorry is used more for like an apology, like I did something wrong. Excuse me is just a way to say, like, I'd like to begin a conversation, but I recognize that you might be busy with something. So excuse me is like, you want to start a conversation. Sorry is like an apology. So I recommend using excuse me in English. In a sentence, excuse me, where can I buy a train pass? Where is the restroom? Okay, the next one is very important. Where is the restroom? Where is the restroom? So this is an important question, I think. So if you're out shopping or if you're like in a sightseeing location, it may be important to know where the restroom is. So Where is the restroom is a nice one to use in English. You can say where is the toilet, but in American English it might sound a little bit too direct. You could also use like where is the washroom, perhaps in British English. But generally, where is the restroom is quite a nice expression to know for English travel. In a sentence, where's the restroom? I'd like, please. The next expression is I'd like something, please. This is useful when you visit restaurants. I'd like a beer, please. I'd like a salad, please. You can also use it when you're shopping. So I'd like 3 of that t-shirt, please. I don't know why you need 3. Or I'd like 4 of these, please. So I'd like, again, that D sound. So the same I'd like as we talked about in the first word in this episode, I'd like to go to, we can use I'd like plus a noun phrase. I'd like something, please. Very useful for ordering and for shopping. So, in a sentence, I'd like a beer, please. How do you say in English? The next expression is how do you say something in English? How do you say something in English? So if you don't know the English word for something, but you want to know how to say it, you can ask somebody, maybe like a friend or maybe staff at your hotel, for example. If there's someone nearby that you can ask, you can use this question. How do you say this in English? You can point to something like, how do you say this in English? Just pick it up if it's like a water bottle in my case. How do you say this in English? Or like, how do you say that in English? You can use that expression and you can just point to the object to make it clear what you mean. So how do you say something in English? Do you speak language? The next expression is, do you speak language? So do you speak language? So if you want to check and see if the other person speaks your language, you can use this expression. So in my case, I would say, do you speak English? Or if you travel somewhere else, maybe if you're from like Vietnam, you could say, do you speak Vietnamese? Or do you speak Portuguese? Or do you speak Chinese? So you can ask people around you what languages they speak. If you have like an idea that maybe that person can speak that language, you can ask them, do you speak Japanese? So maybe a useful one. Do you speak English too? All right, in a sentence then, procrastinating and study. Let's go. Register for a challenging test. Register for a challenging test. To register for a challenging test. That means registering for a test that is slightly more difficult than your current level. So if you think of yourself as like a beginner right now, maybe try registering for a test that is at like the lower intermediate level. So if you always register for a test or give yourself some goal that is slightly more difficult than your current level, you can always try to be pushing in the upwards direction. You can always try to be pushing to improve little by little. So I say challenging, I don't say difficult, because if you're a beginner and you register for an advanced level test, it's going to be really difficult to meet your goal. It's going to be really difficult to study everything to pass the advanced test. But if you set smaller goals, smaller test goals, maybe you have a better chance of achieving those goals and your motivation will stay up. So try registering for a challenging test to give yourself a goal. Find a movie or TV show to understand. The next idea is to find a movie or a TV show to understand. So finding a movie or a TV show that you can watch every week, or just maybe your favorite movie in the language you're studying, can be a really fun way to motivate yourself. So if you have like a TV show you want to watch every week, you can focus your energy on trying to learn the vocabulary words or to learn the expressions that are used in that TV show. And perhaps week after week, you'll start to hear some similar things and start to pick up the way that people speak in that show. So having something that's kind of fun and a little bit entertaining to use as you study can help you enjoy what you're doing a little bit more. So the same thing can apply to a movie. If you find a movie that you really like or you really are inspired by that movie, it can help you as you study because it can motivate you and inspire you to want to know all of like the aspects of that movie, to know everything, all the details of that movie. So finding something that's kind of a little entertaining to help you study can be a good way to stop procrastinating sometimes. Get a study buddy. The next idea is to get a study buddy, a study buddy. So what is a study buddy? So buddy is a word we use for friend. So a study buddy then is a friend that you study with, or a friend that you tell your study goals to, someone who can make sure you are responsible for your behavior. So if you have a study buddy, you can maybe check in with them every few days or like once a week. Maybe you go to a study group together, or maybe you practice conversation together. You can set goals with your study buddy so you don't feel like you're studying alone all the time. If you study alone all the time, you might feel like I have nobody to practice with, or nobody understands my goals, or I feel like I'm the only person with my goal. So having a friend, having a study buddy can help you to feel a little bit more like part of a team, and to help you like through questions that you might not understand, or maybe they have some resources that you don't have and that can help you as you study. So getting a study buddy can be both really fun and really helpful for you. Enroll in a course. The next idea is to enroll in a course. Enroll in a course. So like to enroll in a course means to start a course or to register for a course. So in this case, we're talking about a course of study, like a language course, if you're studying English. Enrolling in a course can be helpful because it creates accountability. It creates responsibility. If you enroll in a course, you're paying money, presumably. And if you miss a class, if you miss a session of your course, you can think of it as money wasted, essentially. So if I'm paying maybe $50 for each lesson in a course and I don't attend, that means that I'm wasting $50. So if you think of it this way, and you are enrolled in a course, then maybe this can help you study because you don't want to waste your money. So by attending class, you're using your money well, you're using your time well to study, and you also have the option to talk to your classmates and to the teacher there about any questions that you have. So enrolling in a course, especially like a weekly course or maybe even like a daily course or intensive course, can help you in a lot of different ways, I think. Create a social media account for your studies. The next idea is to create a social media account for your studies. So this is a popular way to get some daily practice actually creating with the language that you're studying. So a really common tool for this is Twitter. I've seen many people use Twitter to do this. They create a Twitter account that's specifically for their English language studies. So people will write about their day in English if they're studying English. So if they don't have a chance to maybe speak with colleagues in the language they're studying, or to write an email, for example, if they don't have a way to practice making outputs, many people choose to use social media to do that. So it's kind of a way to reach out, to find other people who are studying, or to find resources to read every day about the thing you're studying. But you also have the chance to create something yourself. So if you like, you could try making a social media account that's devoted only to your studies. So try that out. Sign up for a regular event in your studies. The next idea is to sign up for a regular event in your studies. So that means if you're studying English, for example, maybe you can try to attend like a monthly get-together in English somewhere. So this can be about your hobbies. It can be about just something in your community, a school event, for example. If you find something that you are able to do in English, in this case, that's also related to your hobbies, it can be helpful for you because you start to see the ways that you can use English in a situation outside of just your textbook maybe, or a situation that's outside of just your studies. But getting an idea of how other people are using the language, and getting an idea of like how you can potentially use the language in other ways. So going to a regular, like a monthly event, or maybe something twice a month or whatever, that's maybe outside your course or outside of your test studies, can be another good way to get some exposure, to have a chance to actually use the things you're learning and to learn new things. Make studying part of your daily routine. The next idea is to make studying a part of your daily routine. So by this I mean, for example, taking 30 minutes in the morning or 30 minutes at night or maybe 30 minutes at lunch, whatever it is for you, finding time in your day, every day, to do a little bit of study. So even if you're only doing 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night, it's better than 0. So that's 20 minutes over the course of one day, which is still better than 0 minutes ever. If you can find a way to make studying part of your day, and you can kind of create a routine that studying is part of, it can help you just kind of become used to doing that. So study doesn't feel like a job, or studying doesn't feel like a chore. It's just something you do, like brushing your teeth or cooking breakfast or having a cup of coffee or whatever. So if you make studying part of your routine, then after a while it might not feel like work. It might not feel like study. It might just feel like, okay, this is just the thing I do at this time of the day. So give that a try. Try to integrate study, try to put study into your daily routine. Reward yourself when you finish studying. The next idea is to reward yourself when you finish studying. So when you finish your studies, whatever that time period might be, whether it's 30 minutes or 1 hour, or you went to your course for the week, try finding a way to reward yourself for studying. This can be a very simple thing, like, for example, buying yourself a cup of coffee, or you get to have a piece of chocolate, or after you finish studying, you can watch your favorite TV show. So find a way to put reward into your study routine. So once you finish studying, there's something good that happens that you can expect at the end of your study period. So kind of reward yourself, so that it helps you develop and feel motivated to continue doing that study routine. Make your goals public. The next idea is to make your goals public. So make your goals public means share your goals with people. So if you don't want to share your goals with everybody, maybe you can just tell a few friends about your goal. So if that goal is to pass a test, for example, or if that goal is to master a certain grammar point, or maybe the goal is to learn a certain number of vocabulary words, whatever that is, try telling people about that goal, because then it kind of creates some responsibility for you. Like, if you tell people about that goal, they might ask you about it in the future. And if you say, I didn't do it, or I couldn't do it, or I'm not studying at all, you might feel kind of bad about that, actually. So actually telling people about your goal creates that accountability and that responsibility for you. So try sharing your goal with the people around you. Also, they might support you. There's a chance that they can support you, or they can offer help. They can offer something to help you achieve your goal. So try that. Make studying a game. The last idea is to make studying a game, So in some cases, you can find applications, or you can find games, you can find ways to study where someone has already programmed a game, especially for vocabulary words, for example. You can find a way to enjoy your studies. If that doesn't already exist, try to invent a game, especially if you have a study group or a study buddy. Try to find creative and fun ways to use the things that you're studying. Then you can actually enjoy your studies. You don't have to think of it as work, but you can actually see how your studies can be fun. Some examples of games that you could use when you study English, there's a game called Scrabble, where you get points by creating words. So the more words you know, the better chance you have of getting a high score in the game. So Scrabble is one way that you could do it. For children, one that's good is sort of it looks like a worksheet actually, but it's called Mad Libs. It's called Mad Libs. This is something that my brother and I used to play when we were little. It's a worksheet, but some of the words are missing in the worksheet. And we can't see the whole story really. It's good to play this game with 2 people. So one person reads the worksheet, and there are blank spaces on the worksheet that say adverb or adjective or verb. So you ask the other person to give you an adjective, to give you a verb, and you write those words in the story. When they've given you all the words that you need to make the story complete, you then read the full story to the person using the words that they've given you, and it usually becomes something kind of funny. So this can be a good way to test your grammar and also just to get kind of creative with the sorts of words that you're choosing. So that might be good for kids as well. So there are a lot of different things that you can do. Of course, you can create your own games as well. Let's start with the basic definition. The basic definition of the verb beat is to hit repeatedly, to hit something repeatedly. Examples. He was beaten until he was unconscious. I have to beat the dust out of this blanket. Let's talk about the conjugations of this verb now. Present, beat, beats. Past, beat. Past participle, beaten. Progressive, beating.
Let's talk about some additional meanings for this verb. The first additional meaning is to defeat, to defeat. Some examples. I think Spider-Man could beat Batman in a fight. Our team has never been beaten. So in both of these example sentences, we see beat meaning defeat. In the first example sentence, I think Spider-Man could beat Batman. It means Spider-Man could beat Batman in a fight. That's kind of the implied, the suggested meaning of this sentence. Spider-Man could beat Batman equals Spider-Man could defeat Batman. Spider-Man would be better than Batman. Spider-Man would win in a fight against Batman. Spider-Man would beat Batman. In the second example sentence, our team has never been beaten. It means our team has never been defeated. Our team has never lost. Our team has won every match, every game we have ever played. Our team has never been beaten. So no defeats, pretty great. So this is one meaning, to defeat something. Okay, let's go on to the second additional meaning for this verb. The second additional meaning for this verb is to act before something else happens. Examples. Let's beat the crowds and get tickets for the afternoon movie. I left the house early to beat rush hour traffic. Okay, so both of these examples show one action happening before some other negative thing we want to avoid. In the first example sentence, it's about avoiding big crowds of people at a movie theater. So let's beat the crowds is the expression that's used there. So beat the crowds doesn't mean hit the crowds of people. It means take action to do something before the crowd of people arrives. And that action will be to see the afternoon movie. So let's beat the crowds means let's do something before this crowd of people. In the second example sentence, it's I left the house early to beat the rush hour traffic. We see rush hour traffic is the thing to beat. So again, it doesn't mean hitting rush hour traffic. It means doing something, in this case, leaving the house early to beat in order to avoid rush hour traffic. So we're doing something before this other negative thing happens. So in these examples, it's a large crowd of people and rush hour traffic. So we do something to avoid that thing, to do something before that thing happens. Okay, let's go on to the third meaning for this verb. The third meaning for this verb is to be more enjoyable than something else, to be more enjoyable than something else. Examples. Enjoying some sun on the beach sure beats working in an office. Relaxing at home beats spending the day shopping. So both of these example sentences present two ideas, one of which is better than the other. In the first example sentence, enjoying the sun on the beach beats or is better than, is more enjoyable than working in an office. In the second example sentence, relaxing at home beats or is more enjoyable than spending the day shopping. So we're comparing two things, and the thing that is better, we use beats just after that. So when you want to use this pattern, you can just say A beats B, where A is better than B. A is more enjoyable than B. The fourth meaning here is to have a regular movement, like to have a rhythmic movement that is regular in some way. Examples. My heart was beating fast after my run. The bird's wings beat the air. In the first example sentence, my heart was beating fast after my run. It means the rhythm of my heart, the steady, regular rhythm of my heart was fast after my run. So the rhythm was constant, but it was quick. So in the second example sentence about the bird's wings, it's this motion. The bird's wings beat the air. So there's a rhythmic, a steady motion happening. The bird's wings beat the air, meaning it's like going regularly here. So we can see this use of beat as well to refer to a regular kind of rhythmic motion. Let's move on to some variations in how we can use this then. The first variation is to beat someone to something. To beat someone to something means to do something before someone else. So it kind of has that meaning of defeat that we talked about before. Examples. I was gonna book tickets for the show, but you beat me to it. All my coworkers beat me to the office this morning. So in these expressions, beat me to something means someone did something before me.
In the first example sentence, I was gonna book tickets for the show, we see the past tense. I was going to book tickets for the show, but you beat me to it. So this is quite common. You beat me to it means you did that thing I just talked about before me. So I planned to do it, but you did it before me. You beat me to it. This is quite a common expression to use. In the second example sentence, all my coworkers beat me to the office this morning. It means all my coworkers got to the office before me this morning. So when you want to talk about someone doing something before you, you can say they beat me to the office. Keep in mind, though, that this kind of has the nuance a little bit of competition. Like there's something that you want to do before someone else. Like there's a little bit of a competitive feel with this expression. Okay, let's go on to the second variation here. The next variation is beat yourself up. To beat yourself up, this means to be very negative or critical about yourself, often for no reason or not for a big reason. Examples. Don't beat yourself up. It was just a small mistake. I think he's really beating himself up for declining that job offer. Okay, in the first example sentence, don't beat yourself up. This is a very common expression. It means don't be so negative about yourself. In this case, we follow this expression with, it was just a small mistake. So in other words, it's not a big problem. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be so negative to yourself for such a small mistake. In the second example sentence, I think he's really beating himself up for declining that job offer. It means he's thinking really negatively about his decision. He's thinking about himself critically, like, oh, it wasn't a good idea. I shouldn't have done that. He's really down, maybe disappointed in himself for declining the job offer. Though maybe it's not a big deal. It's not an important situation. So he doesn't need to beat himself up, or he is beating himself up about it in this case. So he's upset, in other words. But maybe he doesn't need to be. Let's begin with the basic definition of this verb. The basic definition of carry is to move while holding or supporting something. Examples. Can you carry this bag? I always carry a pen. Okay, let's look at the conjugations for this verb. Present, carry, carries. Past, carried. Past participle, carried. Progressive, carrying. Now let's talk about some additional meanings for this verb. The first additional meaning is to move a person or an object from one place to another. Examples. Veins carry blood throughout the body. The bus carried the children to school. So here we see objects and people being moved from one place to another through or via or by something else. And we use the verb carry to describe that. In the first example sentence, veins carry blood throughout the body. Veins are the, you can see them on your arm, usually blue colored. They're the kind of like pipes, I guess you could say, like imagine them as pipes that carry blood. So blood travels through the body through these veins. So we can say veins carry blood through the body. So veins are the method through which blood moves throughout the body. So veins are carrying the blood. We kind of can imagine in that way. They're carrying, they're responsible for carrying the blood. So we can say that veins are kind of responsible for moving blood around the body. We can use the verb carry to explain that. In the second example sentence, the bus carried the kids to school. The bus is the method of transport for the kids. So the kids are moving from one place to another place. The bus is the method of movement. So the bus carried the kids to school. We can use carry to talk about this transportation. The second additional meaning is to have a gene or illness. Examples. Rodents are known to carry rabies. Some people carry diseases they don't know about. In the first example sentence, we see rodents are known to carry rabies. So rodents are like small, like rats or mice, those kinds of dirty sort of creatures, wild creatures. Rabies is a disease, a serious illness that like causes you to behave strangely, and your body has really strange problems too. I won't talk about rabies that much, not so important here. But rodents are known to carry rabies. So the small, like the biological parts, the things that cause rabies, they carry that illness. Rodents are known to carry. So it doesn't mean carry like a backpack really, but carry a gene or carry an illness, carry a sickness inside the body. In this case, rodents are known to carry the sickness that is rabies inside their bodies. In the second example sentence, some people carry diseases they don't know about. It means some people have diseases in their body, but they don't know about the disease. So you can imagine like we carry the disease, we hold it in our body and we move around, but we don't know about it. We use the verb carry to talk about this. Let's move on to the third meaning. The third additional meaning is to make something a success, to make something a success. Examples. His leadership carried the team through a difficult time. Her performance carries the show. So in both of these examples, we see that someone carried something. So someone caused something to be successful because of their actions or because of their leadership, as we see in the first example sentence. So his leadership carried the team through a difficult time means the team was successful in a difficult time because of his leadership. But we use the verb carry to mean that. So we can kind of imagine that this one person, in this case, his leadership, and his abilities to be a good leader, in other words, were kind of the thing that carried the team. So we can imagine the whole team is on top of this one guy's leadership skills. So he is responsible for making the team a success in a difficult time. So we use carry to explain that. In the second example sentence, her performance carried the show. It means her performance was so good, it was so important that the show was a success because of it. So without her performance, maybe the show would not have been successful. But her performance was really, really good. Her performance made the show a success. Her performance carried the show. The fourth meaning of this verb is to reach a distance, to reach a distance. This can be like sound or it can be something physical. Some examples of this. The sound of the thunder carried 20 kilometers. Ash from the volcano carried into the air. So here, we're not actually carrying a physical object. In the first example sentence, it's sound traveling. So the sound of thunder carried 20 kilometers. It means we were able to hear the sound of thunder 20 kilometers away from the source. So the sound carried, in other words. We use carry to refer to sound traveling a distance. In the second example sentence, ash from the volcano carried into the air. It means the ash from the volcano moved into the air. We could even say like the ash from the volcano carried into the next city, for example. So it traveled into the next city. It traveled some distance, but we can use carry to talk about that as well. Let's move on to some variations for this verb. So the first variation is to get carried away. To get carried away. This means to get too excited or too involved in something. Usually it has like a positive meaning. We get carried away because we're excited about something. But let's look at some examples first. I got a little carried away baking last night. He got carried away listening to music. Both of these examples are pretty innocent. In the first example sentence, we see, I got a little carried away baking last night. It's like I baked too much last night. The idea is that I was too excited about my baking and I baked too much. Or maybe I stayed up too late baking something. I got carried away with it. I did too much of it because I was so interested in this thing. In the second example sentence, he got carried away listening to music. It maybe means he spent too much time listening to music. Maybe he forgot to do his homework, or he forgot to go to work, or he was late for work or something. Because he was carried away, he was so interested in listening to music, he forgot something, or he did too much of it, in other words. So this generally just means that you're too excited about something or too involved in something. So it can have a positive meaning.
The next variation is to carry over. To carry over means to continue into the next period. To continue into the next period. Examples. Unused data will carry over into the next month. My airline miles carried over into this year. So these two expressions both use like points or miles or some kind of data. In the first example sentence, it's like a mobile phone contract. Unused data will carry over into the next month. If, for example, I have 1 gig of data available on my mobile phone every month, but I only use 500 megabytes, I have 500 megabytes remaining. That's my unused data. That amount carries over to the next month. That means I have 1 gigabyte plus 500 megabytes of data to use in the next month. So carry over means that amount continues to the next period. We see the same thing in the second example sentence. My airline miles carried over into this year, meaning my airline miles from the previous year carried over or continued into this year. So maybe I didn't use those miles last year, but they continued into this year and I can still use them. So carrying over means continuing something. We see it a lot in like credit card contracts or like mileage plans or data plans. Anything with data, points, numbers, we might see that sort of thing. If you've studied your target language, but you can barely understand native speakers, you might be doing something wrong. You know the vocabulary and grammar they're using, but for some reason, when they speak at a faster speed, you can't keep track of what's going on. Why is this happening? Have you spent all this time learning in vain? This is a common issue that all language learners face at some point or another. The truth is, it's actually a good problem to have, because only students with a higher level of skill will experience it. When you know a lot of the language, but have trouble understanding native speakers, the problem is almost always with your listening skills. Learning what words mean and practicing how to use them in a sentence are both invaluable skills to develop. But people often forget that in addition to speaking, writing, and reading, we have to develop our listening skills in a foreign language as well. In this video, we'll look at 3 practical ways to improve your listening skills. Number 1, practice active listening. One of the best ways to practice listening is to, well, listen to your target language. But this doesn't mean putting on some music and listening to it in the background as you do other things. You need to practice active listening. Get your hands on a recording of spoken language. You can use a movie, news broadcast, or a podcast. You can even try subscribing to a YouTube channel. Listen to a segment of the audio and do your best to write down what you hear. After a couple tries at this, go back and double-check what you wrote against the script of what was actually said. If you're watching a movie, you can double-check yourself by turning on the subtitles. Our language learning program is one of the best tools for developing your listening skills. You can listen to the conversation in a lesson and then check it back against the lesson transcripts. This is simple, easy, and you can be sure that the transcripts are correct. Number 2, practice pronunciation. Any problems you have pronouncing new words correctly will be reflected back in your listening skills. It's hard for your brain to decipher and remember a sound, be it a letter or a word, that you don't know how to make yourself. A good accent will give you the ability to hear and pick out the otherwise unnatural new sounds. To develop your accent, focus on any sounds or letters that feel difficult or unnatural for you. Once you get more comfortable with the basic sounds, start to combine them using words and whole sentences. Listen to native speakers as much as possible, and take note of how words and sounds can blend, morph, or get dropped in rapid speech. Do your best to listen to this phenomenon and imitate what you hear. Focus more on how the syllables are said together, rather than simply saying the words next to each other. There is often a significant difference between how words are said individually and how they are said when spoken together in a rapid-fire sentence. This is a big part of the reason language learners can know a lot of vocabulary and grammar but still not understand native speakers. Our playback feature is great for pronunciation practice. You can play back the podcast itself or listen to words individually. You can even listen back at a slower speed if you're having trouble catching the correct pronunciation at native speaker speed. Number 3, make listening part of your routine. Now that you've started practicing active listening and pronunciation, make it a part of your regular learning. Allot a specific amount of time for each of your listening activities. For example,
You might practice 10 minutes of active listening, followed by 10 minutes of practicing vowels, and then 10 minutes of imitation practice with a podcast. Now, you don't have to use this schedule exactly. Tailor it to your own needs and availability. The point is that you should make a conscious and decisive effort to practice your listening skills on a regular basis. It could be 30 minutes a day, or it might be 10. What matters most is that you practice consistently. These 3 tips will help you close any gap that might exist between your knowledge of your target language and your listening abilities. Understanding native speakers may seem daunting at first, but with a little time and perseverance, you will see your skills improve. Few things are more discouraging than putting in the work and effort to learn a foreign language, only to not use it for a while and forget a large part of what you studied. Once you have a good handle on a language, it's not hard to practice it so that it stays in the forefront of your mind. In this video, we'll take a look at 5 practical ways you can make your target language a part of your daily life so that you don't forget it. Number 1, use language exchanges. The idea behind a language exchange is that you find someone who fluently speaks your target language and is also interested in learning your native language. During the exchange, you spend half the time speaking in the language you're learning and the other half in the language they're learning. This kind of exchange is a great way to practice your speaking skills and cement the material you've learned into your brain. One great thing about practicing through a language exchange is that your language partner is a fellow language learner. They will be able to sympathize with your struggles and even give you some insightful tips from their own personal experience. Most major cities will have at least one meetup or language club where you can practice languages with people from around the world. But sometimes it can be hard to find people who speak the language you're learning. If you can't find a local exchange, or if there are no native speakers in your city, you can connect with native speakers through online language exchanges. There are numerous free sites that allow you to search for users based on country and language and have a text, audio, or video practice session. Number 2, immerse yourself digitally. Most phones, laptops, and apps will allow you to change the language of their interface. Why not change it to your target language? This simple change may seem small, but it can actually be an effective way to reinforce your use of the language. Your language skills are like a muscle. If you use them on a regular basis, then your skill in the language will be in good shape. The more you use your language skills, the easier it will be to remember things. However, if you go for long stretches without using the language, then you might have a problem. Those linguistic muscles will start to get weak before too long, and you'll notice a drop in your language ability. Simply changing the language on your electronic devices won't equate to any heavy lifting in a foreign language, but it could be comparable to a warm-up or a quick workout. Remember that you probably use electronic devices every day. If you can use at least some of that time thinking in your target language while using them each week, that adds up to a huge amount of time and can keep your knowledge fresh. Number 3, teach others a language. You don't have to be an expert in a new language to lend a hand to another language learner. Helping a beginner through the language will not only make you feel good about helping someone out, it will also help you use the language and keep your skills sharp. Remember those language exchanges we talked about? Well, what if you looked for other learners so that you could help them in the language? Don't worry if you don't feel qualified to teach the language. They're not looking to get their PhD in linguistics. Most likely, a new learner would appreciate someone who's been down the road before, someone to show them some common pitfalls and shortcuts. Have you ever been a complete newbie in something and been graciously helped by someone with more experience? Pay it forward and be that expert to someone else. Your language muscles will thank you for it. Number 4, keep a journal or blog. Writing out your thoughts in a foreign language is one of the best ways to sharpen your skills. It forces you to take time to construct sentences, and it will reveal your weak points very quickly. Journaling is also one of the easiest and cheapest ways to practice. All you need is a pen and a notebook. If you're not the journaling type, don't worry. You don't have to write an autobiography. Simply recounting your day or describing an experience will be enough to get your language juices flowing. The entries can be long, but they don't have to be. This exercise is flexible and can take any shape you want. Try writing short daily entries. You can even post them online for native speakers to correct. This way, you can hold yourself accountable and write regularly. There are several free sites that allow you to post an entry and have it reviewed by native speakers. Number 5, entertain yourself in the language. Books, movies, YouTube videos, language learning websites, music, the list goes on. There's an endless supply of media out there, so you're likely to find something that interests you in your target language. Whether you love sports, rock music, or sewing, you're sure to find something to entertain you in your target language. Learning a language is hard, but remembering it doesn't have to be. These ideas are here to help jumpstart your brain. These aren't the only ways to practice your target language either. Do your best to use the language on a daily basis and make it a part of your everyday life. Remember, all languages aren't just spoken, they're lived. The fear of making mistakes is one of the biggest roadblocks to language learning. Out of all the discomforts that come with learning a foreign language, nothing looms quite as daunting in the mind of a beginner. It's almost as if we're hardwired to want perfection when we speak. However, the reality is that mistakes are unavoidable. In fact, mistakes are an integral part of the learning process. Think of small children who are just starting to learn language. They mispronounce words, they use words incorrectly, and their grammar isn't very good. Sometimes they even make up their own words. Research shows that this is all a natural part of the process. If making mistakes made up such a huge part of learning our native language, why do you expect it to be any different when learning a foreign one? In this video, we'll talk about 6 ways you can benefit from your mistakes while learning language. Number 1, be humble. There's no room for pride when you're learning a new language. If you're a beginner, native speakers will likely be very accommodating with your mistakes and slower reaction times during conversations. There's no reason to be embarrassed. Remember that it's a sign of respect to learn another person's language. No one expects you to speak flawlessly right from the start. No one's going to hold your mistakes against you, so make sure you don't either. Number 2, don't play the comparison game. Whether it's a native speaker or another person learning the language, don't make the mistake of comparing your progress to someone else's. No doubt, at the beginning, there will be times when it feels like everyone is speaking perfectly and you're left in the dust. But try not to get discouraged. It's your race to run, not theirs. Everyone has their own story, their own reason, and their own method for learning. Comparing your progress to someone else's progress is like comparing apples and oranges. It's easy to stress out when someone speaks perfectly while you're struggling to make the most basic sentences. But don't forget that while you can easily see someone else's success, you're much less likely to see the hard work that got them there. Every speaker you meet had to learn the language at some point. Whether it was as a child or as an adult, they too had to wade through their mistakes before they could speak fluently. Number 3, get feedback on your mistakes. Anytime you write or speak your target language, try to get feedback from someone who speaks that language. You can make mistakes day and night, but if they're never corrected, they do you no good. If you can't learn from a mistake, or if you don't know that it's a mistake, it won't help you. Many in the language learning community hold that feedback is an integral part of the language acquisition process. Encourage friends and language partners to correct your speaking anytime, all the time. Worst case scenario, you'll make a mistake 100 times and get corrected 100 times. It might seem frustrating, but it's all worth it on the 101st time when you finally remember your mistake and start speaking correctly. Some mistakes will be easy to fix, and you'll adjust your speaking right away. Others might take a while. Speaking a foreign language is a little bit like juggling. There are a lot of moving pieces you have to keep in place. Whether it's pronunciation, grammar, or vocabulary, getting feedback on your effort will help refine your language skills until you feel comfortable in the language. Number 4, listen to your brain. After all the practice and feedback, eventually you'll start to notice that certain words come to mind without having to think about them. Instead of having to scan your brain for the latest new vocabulary word, you begin to instinctively come up with a word for a given sentence. Don't hesitate to blurt this word out. Sometimes it will be completely wrong. Other times it will be dead on. When words start coming to mind instinctively, that means your brain is starting to get more and more used to using a new language. The incorrect words are sort of like growing pains. You'll have them for a little while, but over time you'll encounter them less and less, until all of your instinctual words are correct. So don't let the fear of making a mistake short-circuit your brain's natural learning process. Go with whatever word your brain gives you. Number 5, never take the easy way out. If there are 2 ways to say what you want to say in your target language, one you know and are comfortable with, and the other you're not sure of, use the one you're least comfortable with. Purposely choose subjects and sentence constructions that are difficult for you. Don't get complacent and fall into the trap of using the same phrase over and over again, or having the same type of conversation with a language partner. You always want to push your language skill boundaries to stretch them even further. Number 6, enjoy the language for its own sake. Small children not only make a ton of mistakes when they learn to speak, they also have a ton of fun. To them, life and language are both giant, mysterious adventures. They aren't worried about making progress, impressing people, or speaking perfectly. Take a note from their playbook. Enjoy the language as you learn it. Let your focus be on the beauty and magic of the language. Savor the times you get to use it. If you loosen up and enjoy the ride, you'll learn much faster. Mistakes are a powerful and indispensable part of learning a language. We hope this video inspires you to stop being afraid of them and start embracing them. Are you improving? How to assess your language skills. Have you ever wondered, am I actually getting better with my target language? If you want to know how to check and see if you've improved or not, then keep watching. Today you'll learn why assessment can mean the difference between fluency and failure, how to assess your language skills even if you're learning on your own, and much more. But first, listen up. Here are this month's new lessons and resources. First, the Writing a Journal cheat sheet. With this cheat sheet, you'll be able to keep a diary in your target language and talk about your day. Inside, you'll find phrases for common daily activities, from morning to night. Second, if you love travel, then you'll love our brand new Travel Words and Phrases PDF ebook. Learn all the must-know travel phrases. Download it for free right now. Third, must-know words and phrases for your resume. If you want to write your resume in your target language, then this next 1-minute lesson is for you. Fourth, the top 12 April Fool's phrases. Want to prank others and speak more of your target language? Then you'll want this April Fool's phrase list. Fifth, must-know vocab for doing laundry. If you need language for practical situations like doing laundry, then this 1-minute lesson is for you. You'll learn how to say washing machine, detergent, softener, and much more. To get your free resources, click the link in the description below right now. They're yours to keep forever. Okay, let's jump into today's topic. Are you improving? How to assess your language skills. So, have you ever wondered, am I actually improving with my target language? Feeling like you're not improving can hurt your motivation. On the flip side, if you notice yourself understanding more of the language than before, you can feel good, and that can fuel your motivation to keep going. But it's not easy to spot your improvement. It's tricky with language. It's not like going to the gym, where you can see your muscles in the mirror. This is where assessment comes in. What's assessment? The easiest example of assessment is a test. If you go to a language class, you'll get a test on the first day. The goal of the assessment test is to understand where your language level is. And any test after that is a way to see how much you've improved. This is ongoing assessment. So assessment is checking where you are now and how far you've come with your language learning. Assessment lets you see where you've improved and helps you find what you need to work on. If you're serious about learning a language, it's one of the best things you can do to stay on track, stay motivated, correct your mistakes, and reach fluency. But assessing yourself is also hard if you're learning on your own. So what can you do? Here's how you can assess your language skills, whether you're learning with our program or not. Number 1, if you're a Premium Plus user, retake the assessment test. Technically, you can only take this once, but if you get in touch with our support team, we'll give you the link. If you're using any other resource, find a way to test yourself. Look for practice tests, apply for a proficiency test, take online quizzes, anything that forces you to test your language skills. Number 2, revisit old lessons. An easier way to self-assess your language level is to revisit old lessons. You can do this with any program you're learning with. If you've truly made progress, then you should be able to understand the lesson dialogues with no problem. If not, then you know that you need to review them some more. Number 3, try harder lessons. Also something you can do with any language resource. If you're using our program, try lessons from a higher level. If you're a lower intermediate, try upper intermediate lessons. If you don't understand anything, that's fine. But if you do, then that's a good sign that you've improved and are ready for harder lessons. Number 4, for reading, check out our extensive reading books. These are available for all levels, from absolute beginner to advanced. You can reread old ones or try harder ones to see where your current level is. You'll find these books in our lesson library. This will help you assess your reading and comprehension skills. Number 5, for speaking, use our voice recording tool. If you can easily repeat the lines from the conversation, that's a good sign. Or, if you're using another program, try to shadow the provided conversations. If you can do it without a problem, then you've made progress and are ready to go to the next level. Number 6, for writing, try and copy out our lesson dialogue by hand. The point here is to see if you can write smoothly or not, as a way of assessing your writing. You can also do this with any textbook. You can also take a picture of your writing and send it to your Premium Plus teacher for feedback. Number 7. Use our Premium Plus assignments. If you're a Premium Plus member, you can ask your teacher to send you weekly assignments based on your needs, whether for reading, writing, speaking, or listening. And they'll provide you feedback so you can see where you are with each skill. So to recap, 1. Take our assessment test. 2. Revisit old lessons. 3. Try harder lessons. 4. Use our extensive reading books for reading. 5. Use our voice recording tool. 6. Write out dialogues by hand. And 7. Take advantage of our assignments. Remember, the point of assessment is not to pass or fail, but to see where you've improved and where you need to work. So thank you for watching this episode of Monthly Review. Great work! Here's a reward. Speed up your language learning with our PDF lessons. Get all of our best PDF cheat sheets and ebooks for free. Just click the link in the description.